Have you ever wondered, what if an ordinary toy handed over by a child was actually the first clue to unraveling an entire espionage network? That morning, President Ibrahim Traoré was visiting a primary school in southern Burkina Faso. Children dressed in colorful outfits greeted him with excitement. Tiny flags waved in the air, songs echoed across the yard. The president smiled warmly, but among the crowd, one quiet child stood out. No older than 11, wearing a worn-out t-shirt, old pants, and clutching a stuffed teddy bear tightly under his arm. Something about him was different. Without saying a word, the boy stepped forward and offered the teddy bear to Traoré. The president accepted the gift with a nod of gratitude. The crowd clapped at the innocent gesture, but the boy didn't smile. He just stared, a long, piercing, strangely silent look. Then, as quickly as he had appeared, he disappeared back into the crowd. That night, the teddy bear sat on Traoré's desk. In the dim light of his study, a faint click echoed from inside the toy's stitched seam. Traoré cautiously opened the plush bear. Inside, he found a small stainless steel tube, and inside that tube, a microfilm. The film contained encrypted messages, but one line stood out crystal clear. "You are being watched." Traoré's expression froze. This wasn't just a toy. It was a message. But why a child? And why now? The intelligence team was alerted immediately. The microfilm was sent for urgent analysis. And yet, a single question kept haunting the president's thoughts. If this was only a warning, what if the real danger hadn't even started yet? What that microfilm revealed would uncover a shadow far deeper than anyone expected. Overnight, the atmosphere in the presidential palace had shifted dramatically. When the microfilm arrived at the intelligence lab just before dawn, the data it revealed left everyone in stunned silence. The image was a hand-drawn map, circles in colored pencil, lines crossing terrains, and cryptic notes marked with letters. At first glance, it looked like an old mining diagram, but this was no ordinary map. It showed secret routes, smuggling tunnels, and hidden border crossings. Several locations had just one word written over them: active. These markings aligned with Burkina Faso's richest mining regions: gold, lithium, and uranium zones. Additional notes read things like G4, Channel D-15, and Exit, Togo. These coded phrases could represent paths within a smuggling network, but what truly shocked these analysts was the level of precision. The only way someone could have drawn this map was from the inside. Traoré stared at it for minutes. His eyes froze on one particular location, a strategic passage in the heart of the country, a route only the president and a handful of high-ranking commanders were aware of. And now that very route had been exposed. This microfilm wasn't just a warning, it was proof of betrayal from within. Someone is leaking our most sensitive information and hiding it inside children's toys, Traoré said through clenched teeth. And these toys, they are no longer innocent. Yet one question still had no answer. Why a child? Was the boy chosen at random? Or was he part of something far more organized? For Traoré, this was no longer just a case of espionage. It was a war of intelligence. And for the first time, the battlefield began not with bullets, but inside a classroom. Ismael was only 11 years old, quiet, timid, and nearly invisible. The same small hands that had handed President Traoré a worn-out teddy bear were now clenched in his lap as he sat silently in the corner, surrounded by psychologists, agents, and teachers, unsure of whom to trust or even how to respond. He answered no questions, avoided all eye contact, and hadn't spoken a single word. It was as if some invisible wall had been programmed to keep him from speaking. When Traoré met the boy face to face for the first time, he said just one thing: "I am not your enemy, Ismael." But the boy didn't even lift his eyes. Specialists were brought in. Child psychologists, trauma counselors, social workers trained to speak the language of children. Each tried gently and patiently. Yet the result remained the same. Ismael stayed silent. But then, a few days later, something changed. Left alone in a quiet corner, Ismael began to draw in his notebook. At first, the drawings looked like nothing more than random scribbles, but on closer inspection, they revealed a hidden story. Tunnels, containers, crates tucked inside truck beds, and above them, strange symbols. some resembling national flags, others that didn't match any known archive or official record. Traoré examined the drawings one by one. Then he asked, "Is this your story, Ismail?" The boy slowly nodded. It was the first reaction he had given. It became clear that Ismail wasn't just a messenger, he was a piece of the puzzle, perhaps unknowingly, or maybe completely aware. But one thing was certain, the teddy bear he handed over wasn't just carrying a message, it was carrying a cry for help buried deep within a child. When all the drawings were compiled, a second layer of the smuggling network began to take shape. A so-called charity organization operating within the country was using children to move sensitive data, money, and instructions. Children were the perfect couriers. No one ever suspected them. But now one child wasn't speaking, he was drawing. And what he was drawing pointed not only to a crime, but to the darkness of an entire system. When Ismail's drawings were combined with the encrypted symbols from the microfilm, a chilling picture emerged. Maps, diagrams, and coded tunnel sketches aligned like pieces of a dark puzzle. This was no longer an isolated case, it was concrete evidence of a systemic international smuggling ring. The first discovery point was an abandoned warehouse just outside the capital. On paper it appeared as a storage facility for an orphanage, but what the agents found inside sent shivers down their spines. Toy-like data capsules, fake humanitarian aid boxes, and cargo labels printed with the names of the various countries. As Traoré traced the people behind this operation, one name kept appearing, a foreign NGO called the Light for Children Foundation. Officially, they were involved in education and relief work, but a closer look revealed a murky truth. Its directors included former intelligence officers and financiers with ties to covert operations. When intelligence officers examined the digital equipment seized from the warehouse, things became even more disturbing. The toys had been shipped not just across Burkina Faso, but also to Niger, Mali, Guinea, and beyond. This was a cross-continental operation. Each toy contained a hidden file, currency stash, or encrypted voice message. And at the center of this entire network were children. Innocent hands had become the couriers. Their toys, once symbols of joy, were now vehicles for secrets, crimes, and betrayal. President Traoré gathered his top security officials. The silence in the room was broken only by his voice. "This isn't just smuggling. It's an ideology that exploits the trust of our children to rob us of our future." At dawn the next day, Operation Silent Toys was launched. Simultaneous raids took place across 5 countries. Agents disguised as aid workers, logistics handlers, and fake volunteers were all arrested one by one. But the most devastating part of the story had yet to be uncovered. Because the child at the center of it all, Ismail, was still carrying a final note tucked deep inside his pocket, and it hadn't been read. Operation Silent Toys was a success. Simultaneous raids across 5 countries dismantled the network's command center. Key figures were arrested, secret tunnels sealed, and evidence confiscated. The global media dubbed it Africa's digital Cold War. But despite the celebration, one thing still haunted President Traoré's mind. The note found in Ismail's pocket. A small, crumpled piece of paper. Written in a trembling hand were just 5 words. "I am only one of them." When Traoré read that sentence, the room fell silent. This wasn't a threat. It was a revelation. A chilling confirmation that what they uncovered was just the beginning. Ismail's teddy bear was not an anomaly. It was the first breadcrumb in a much larger and darker trail. And the note meant that dozens, perhaps hundreds, of children were still being used in secret, across borders and agendas. Traoré made an immediate decision. Silent Toys was no longer just the name of an operation. It became the title of a permanent special investigation unit fell deep in the National Archives. All systems involving children in potential trafficking or covert operations would be investigated. Nationwide awareness programs were launched. A new cyber surveillance network was installed. All foreign aid organizations were placed under strict audit. The next day, Traoré appeared in front of the cameras. In his hands was that same old teddy bear, and standing beside him was Ismail. This time, the boy's eyes weren't cast down. He stood tall, proud. The president faced the nation and said, "A nation's future is carried by its children, and if you dare to steal their trust through toys, one day, their silence will tear your darkness apart." The speech echoed far beyond Africa. The United Nations announced it would re-evaluate NGO oversight protocols. Swiss-based organizations were placed under investigation. But most importantly, a message reached the hearts of thousands of children: you are no longer invisible, and no one will ever silence you with stuffed toys again. That day, Traoré added one more line to history: every child is a nation's heart. And as long as that heart beats, this country's conscience will never go quiet.